Are you a business owner stuck in fear, doubt, and worry about what the marketplace will look like in the future? Then this show is for you. Strap on your seatbelt and get ready to disrupt and innovate. Here's your host, Lisa Levy.
Today, I have a very special guest joining us. Howard Brown is a Silicon Valley entrepreneur. He's the best-selling author of Shining Brightly, an award-winning international speaker, inspirational podcaster, and survivorship coach. He's a health technology consultant and a two-time stage 4 cancer survivor, 30 years apart. He shares the keys to leading a resilient life with the hope of driving a successful community leaders, business innovators, and healthcare patient advocates. Be prepared to be inspired. Howard, welcome to the conversation today.
Lisa, I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me on your show. I'm honored.
I am so thrilled. And with the audience, I share the bio read-in just to set a stage, but it isn't really your story. Will you share your journey with the audience so that it's more impactful than, my 30-second overview?
Yes, absolutely. So I will tell you that thank you for the bio, but that's all like what I do. Who I am is, of course, a son, a twin brother that becomes important a little later on, and a husband and a dad, and a community servant and friend. So that's really who I am. But I've done lots of really cool stuff, and we'll get into that. But it's actually a chapter in my book. One of my first role models was my dad. My dad was on the road salesperson. So you've heard of the Fuller Brush salesperson, door to door. My dad didn't do that. He sold shoes on the road. He was a manufacturer's rep. He would go into a shoe store. Think Al Bundy, right? And he would actually go and sell them women's shoes and then later boots. And he's been a boot salesman for 51 years. He's 80 and still working. The internet helps in online ordering, but he would schlep in cases of boots, put them up and talk about each shoe style to the actual shoe store owner or the tack shop or the manufacturer, for Macy's or whatever that is. So I got to watch him do that. And I said, wow, pretty cool, because the presentation, and then he'd have to pack up and he would schmooze all the people in the store, either buying it or the other, salespeople or people at the cash register. And I was like, wow, this is actually really cool. I never want to do that. But
totally
sales was in my
work.
blood. Yes, absolutely. Really hard work. Yeah. But I knew that sales was, and that out of the office, out of the chair was something that I was appreciate. And I remember I went on the road with him since I was a little kid and watched him do his thing, right? And also he never went into an office his whole life. He's always worked virtual. And again, this is all before computers and all this sort of stuff. So he would handwrite an order and then mail it into the company to get processed. And then he would fax it. And then eventually it's done on computer. And my mom would do it for him because, these little computers weren't his thing, although he has a smartphone now. All right. So with that basis, okay, my dad was always on the road. So he was traveling, salespeople. He put a lot of miles on his car. But I started with athletics very young. I started with ice hockey and then it didn't mesh with Hebrew school. So I started basketball at age 6. And basketball is a big part of my life. I don't think he ever missed a game. I played football, I played basketball, and he never missed a game. And because he was in charge of his schedule. Mm-hmm. And I think the appeal of that entrepreneur is that you control your destiny. You control your time, and time being a huge asset. So I was a pretty good student in school, not all like this brainiac, but I took classes with the smart kids and I took Latin. Really, I don't know why, but I took Latin. But I was vice president of my high school class, and I played basketball in college, and I transferred into Babson College. Babson is the #1 school for entrepreneurship, and it changed the trajectory of my whole life. I was at a liberal arts school before that. Bad fit. And I had someone believe in me. I took a summer class at Babson, and this dean of the grad school, Marilyn Snyder, said, "Do you go here?" I said, "No." "Well, you're getting an A+ in my class." And I had took an organizational behavior and a general management class. She goes, "You belong at Babson." And she was willing to write that recommendation for me to transfer into Babson. This is now early 1985. And Babson, I excelled. Case studies, Coke versus Pepsi, business. It fit me like a glove. And I did internships. I did an internship for a company called Cellular One when cellular phones were introduced, and NCR Corporation, which was NCR, IBM. You can think ATMs and banking systems, and they had a division that did data services, processed bank accounts in a timeshare network. So I was learning the computer industry. So I went to work for them. And unfortunately, as I got promoted to move to Dayton, Ohio, a little spot on my cheek, and we're going to talk about this, but cancer number one was 1989, and it stopped me right in my tracks. I moved home with mom and dad. I survived it, okay, from my twin sister and a bone marrow transplant. That's why miracle number one is important. We'll get into the details of what knocked me down and setbacks, but I got my life back. And I moved to California, and I had to repair myself. I call it, this is Humpty Dumpty version 1 rebuild, the version 1.0. Emotionally, mental toughness, physically, back on the basketball court, back in the gym, back walking on the beach. Got to get my career going. I mean, I had to be able to work a full day, and I would go into an office, and I had a whole set of accounts in the defense industry to call on. And this is when downsizing of computers, data centers was happening. And I put in the time, I put in the work. But one added element is that my friend of mine said, there's this great program at the Jewish Federation. It's called Young Leadership. You'll meet a lot of women, and there's good topics. And I went. And as life, karma was changing. Humpty Dumpty was feeling better. My career was blossoming. I hit some big sales. I was on the basketball court, and I met a woman. I met my wife, Lisa, through the Jewish Federation. It was a beautiful thing. And we got married in 1994 and overlooking the beach. And this is all in my book, and you can see pictures and all that stuff. But I got my life back. Now, I went to work for a startup. It was in the audio, video, nonlinear editing. We changed from analog to digital, how television was made. So that was very disruptive. And this is 1994. Put digital television on air in Hawaii, Seattle, and I sold systems to the television networks. It was a really cool job. And we grew the company from 7 mil to about $500 million. And I was doing about 39 million, about, almost like 8% of the company's sales out of the West Coast. Built a huge team. That was really fun. And also fell off the wagon because I became my workaholic self again. I was really into it. So career's good, and marriage is good, and community service is good. I was helping raise money for people in need, Jewish community and other causes, but I became a Jewish big brother. And I was able to do a give back. And I have a white paper, discussion guide called Mentorship is Leadership. I think choosing to be mentored and actually being a mentee are lost arts. They are part of leadership. And the learning that you're able to instill when you actually are mentoring either a young person or an employee or a relative, okay, which I do in the cancer world or in others, mentor a friend. The learning that you get from extolling your wisdom and watching them, fall and get back up again is so important. And in business, I've had some of the most amazing mentors basically, steward me in and addressing situations and learning presentation, learning competition, learning about, customer care. And I think that's just really such an important art that we need to all think about and become mentors or become mentees ourselves. So I got tapped on the shoulder by this venture capitalist named Ann Winblad, and she runs Hummer Winblad Venture Partners, one of the early pioneers in Silicon Valley. And she said, what you did for video, can you do for audio? I said, I hope so. Right? And so I joined a company called Liquid Audio. Probably no one's heard of it anymore. This is the mid 90s. And we basically had iTunes in the mid 90s, MP3 not invented, Napster not invented. We're listening to cassette tapes. We were listening, I mean, there's still, record albums, vinyl, but we're listening to cassette tapes. And then internet speeds were, basically 28.8 modems. So downloading a full song was not easy. It would take 3 minutes to download a WAV file, right? Yep. So the demo had to be pre-staged. So bad timing. But we took Liquid Audio public, my first public offering. Avid grew like crazy. So it was just make a ton of money and build a whole big team and change the world of analog to digital. So that's huge disruption. This disruption didn't work because the record company was not ready and the timing was not right. But Steve Jobs, 10 years later, invented something called the iPod.
Yep.
And the iPod was the device, and convincing the record companies that you could sell more slices of pizza than whole pies, 99 cents a song, okay, was a different business model. That was disruptive. Liquid Audio didn't get to play in that game. I got off the bus and went into cloud computing and web hosting and took another company public. So it was just very different. But I love Silicon Valley and I hated it at the same time. I loved it because I'm sitting there talking to, Mark Benioff, that was at Oracle at the time, founder of Salesforce.com. I'm talking to Reid Hoffman and one of the first beta testers for LinkedIn. It was cool stuff. The social network that was a big winner at that time was Friendster, MySpace, right?
Yep.
Facebook came along after, and they pissed off their entire community of EDU users and said, we're going to open it up to anyone with a .com or .net or, address. I don't know, bad business model, how you can piss off your whole user base. So I've been part of some really cool roller coaster stuff. The other thing is that it'll consume you so you don't have a life, right? And my wife was like, well, we've been married now for, 7 years. Let's make a family. Well, what I didn't tell you was that before I did chemotherapy in 1989, I actually had a wisdom of a doctor that sent me to a cryogenic center and leave a sperm sample. So Miracle 1, which we'll talk about, my sister saved my life through bone marrow transplant. Miracle 2, frozen sperm up in Silicon Valley, ordered the sperm, sent out to San Jose, and did in vitro fertilization and have a daughter named Emily. And she's now 22, roll the clock forward. But so I love Silicon Valley. I was doing a lot of community service with my wife. I was still a big brother. But I was riding the .com craziness of, 20-hour days and taking a company public. And so roll the clock forward. My sister calls me. I'm moving to Michigan. My wife's from Michigan. We could get the band back together and the kids at age 4 and 6 could grow up together. And my in-laws lived there, easier for my parents to come out from Boston. And we did. In 2005, moved to Michigan. Now, I was running a nonprofit called Planet Jewish, world's first online calendar, way before Google Calendar. And it was a calendar of events. We were replacing basically pen and paper. There were Palm Pilots and there was Blackberries, but no online calendaring yet. No Calendly, none of that stuff existed. So it was very inventive and disruptive. I built it. I actually had instructed the code to do it. Planet Jewish rolled out to 30 cities as a 501c3 nonprofit. And then we were asked to use our code, which is basically private online communities, to do this in other spaces. And so we were asked to do it for Planet Kids and Planet Environment. We decided to stay in the world's largest social networks. What's the world's largest social networks, Lisa? Trick question.
In 2005?
Yeah.
Churches.
Correct. Faith and religion.
Faith and religion. Yeah.
So when I was presenting this to angel investors, largest social network in the world, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, not Judaism. So we built Circle Builder software. Circle Builder was our unbranded Christian brand, but we had Catholic Builder, Christian Builder, Jewish Builder, Muslim Builder, Hindu Builder, and we had platforms on different clouds. Cloud computing was different. Ruby on Rails was brand new. And we architected the code and rolled that out to 45,000 customers, including the Vatican. Nice Jewish boy signs a deal, first outsourcing deal with the Vatican. Not easy, by the way, and hard to go to market. But we went to market in 12 different languages in their churches, and really hard customer. But anyways, it was kind of cool. It was really cool. So from 2006 to 2016, Planet Jewish is running as the nonprofit. Circle Builder is running as a angel invested startup for profit. And in 2016, I went in for a colonoscopy at age 50 and came back with an 8.5 centimeter mass in my intestine. And I got diagnosed with colon cancer. And a year later, metastatic stage 4 colon cancer. Lightning struck again. And I didn't know if I was going to live to see my daughter graduate high school. So I had to stop and shut both of those down. Now, Planet Jewish was being wound down now because calendaring was now very advanced in 2017 from 2000 when it started. And so that we wound down the nonprofit, told the customers transition off, and they did. And Circle Builder had to do the same. I had to choose getting healthy. And so we depreciate the asset, give the investors, 50% off their loss. And, these are angel investors that could afford to take a loss. No one ever wants to, but I could not spend the time doing it. And monetizing the face space is hard. We were doing it, but slowly.
Well, and there's no dollar value for your life, right? There's nothing that you could do with the business that is worth your life, quite literally, in this context.
Correct. So I started in with the chemotherapies, and we'll talk about that and when we get the roadblocks and setbacks. But so get to here today, I am Humpty Dumpty version 2 or 3.0, whatever you want to call it. And I've now put myself out there as an author, speaker, podcaster, and I've built a movement called Shining Brightly that basically is changing the world for overcoming and positivity about taking care of yourself, taking care of others in personal relationships, in business. And I do a lot of coaching on how to, once you get knocked down in life, and it can be a little speed bump or a big speed bump. I mean, it could be lost your job, it could be alcoholism, it could be cancer, it can be a lot of things. I don't discriminate. We all have to walk in that darkness, learn from it, and get back up again in business and in health and in life. So that's today, and I wake up every day saying I'm blessed, lucky, and grateful. And who can I help today?
The story and the journey, right? You were in some very exciting places at very exciting transitional, transformative times. And as you were walking through, I'm going to go back to earlier in your career, because there's a point of connection that I was listening to you talk, and you didn't say the company name when you were talking about nonlinear video initially. You came back to it, but I was a college student in the early 90s studying video production.
Yes.
And in 1994, a group came through with a setup that is a nonlinear editing suite that sits on top of a table, as opposed to walking into the AV suite editing bay that is a room. And that product line was obviously, it was an Avid system. And you mentioned that later.
Yes.
And that was so disruptive and so mind-blowing that, really at that moment in time, I was in my senior year of college, right? My degree is now no longer relevant. All of these skills that I've learned with video, it's done. And nonlinear editing, hello, welcome to the new world. And it is so incredibly cool. And it blows my mind today, the editing that I do inside of, Canva.
Yeah.
Right. That everybody has access to, and you need no really specialized training to do it well. It is art. But to actually just make little videos and put pieces together, just about anybody can do it. And it's just crazy, those experiences. So I was laughing to myself while you were talking through that, going, I know exactly.
I was Avid Broadcast, and we changed the whole television station for ad insertion, for creating ads, for creating value to the car dealership that wants to put their ad out on their station. Pro Tools changed audio. Avid bought them, and so my claim to fame for Avid was in 1994. I was led the sales team, and always a team effort. We put a television station called KNB, is a KITV, ABC affiliate and NBC affiliate, on air with our digital equipment, running through a Silicon Graphics server on air. And then we did the same thing in Seattle for a cable station. And now this is how it's run. Everything's done off a hard drive. Everything's done off a satellite. And I was there at the beginning, and it was really fun. We did Jay Leno's portable units. It was great to be in Burbank and in California at the time. I got to go to a lot of TV shows, and I didn't handle that side of the business, but in the office, we always had free tickets. And really crazy story. I'm at KNBC in LA during the OJ chase scene in the studio, in the newsroom. I stayed there for hours. It was so compelling. I mean,
right. And so did all of America, wherever they were happened to be sitting, because it was so compelling. And then today, right, we start to see the things with, drones and the ability to, fly through a football stadium and all of these things, right? Technology and how it changes and the influence that it has is always so much fun. But through your story and through your experience, you have been in the right place in influencing disruption that is driving innovation.
That's right.
And within that story, you're also making that human connection, that what's important to you are the people and what's happening to them through this journey. And obviously you had challenges and obstacles and roadblocks that, moving through those, have affected and influenced what you're doing today and how you're doing it. So let's dig a little bit deeper into the roadblocks and how that's positioned you for the work that you're doing today.
So what I had to do, when you get a cancer diagnosis, my friend Lee Silverstein says, we have cancer. because it affects me, my caregiver parents, my caregiver wife, my daughter, my family. And I had the analog digital, cancer diagnosis. 1989, there was no cell phones. There was no internet. Computer use was just starting. And we were on dial-up. We didn't have dial-up. We had actually landline phones that were always busy. So getting the communication out was very different. And I had no immune system, so I couldn't see people. But what I did was, when I walked into Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, I started to become a student of being a patient. And I walked in and I saw the old people in one waiting room and the little kids in the pediatrics. And I didn't fit. I was 23. I had to find my place. But what I started to do was to learn. I asked questions. I spent a lot of time, hours waiting for a blood transfusion, but I was talking to people next to me, talking to the nurses, doctors, and trying to understand how I could be collaborative and what was my role in getting better. And technology saved my life. A bone marrow transplant is removing the bone marrow, and then actually putting that back into me. It could have killed me right away. All right. There was a lot of technology of the time, right? When I'm going through colorectal cancer, there's now technology. The imaging that they need to actually detect it is technology. And I actually get all my scans made to full motion video because I'm a techie geek and I know the companies that do that. So I'm using the disruption to become a student of the game. I'm now considered what's called a patient expert, a scientific survivor for the American Cancer Institute. And I speak about that to these health tech companies, to the healthcare and therapeutic companies and the big pharma companies, because AI is the new big disruptor in the game. AI is the new business disruptor. And I really hope that it's going to advance more quickly patient solution, okay? Patient issues, being able to find this. There's so much data out there. What is usable data? Because if it's just data, it's just a mountain usable data. And so AI may be able to help us do that. So I'm excited about that because I am a techie. I'm not a coder, but I dig into it. And I just actually spoke about AI in the publishing business because, listen, go to college today, AI can write all your papers for you. You don't want it to take and do the thinking for you. You still have to do that. But AI has some real positives too. But like anything else, it can be used for bad and it can be used for other things. So I'm excited about that in the health tech and the healthcare space.
And with that in particular, right, AI, keeping in mind for all of us, regardless of what aspect of life or business we're looking at, it's an enabling tool, right? It is not, it is not a replacement for thinking. It is not a replacement for us being accountable for the words and the actions and the things that come out, but it is something that can help us start and elevate much faster than we would as an individual.
Yeah.
And so I think, in that patient experience, the opportunity for AI's game-changing impact to a patient is huge. And especially, right, navigating through the healthcare system is most commonly done when we are ill. We are not in that process when we are healthy and at our best. It is always when we're at our worst. And, I even, throw out that childbirth is a traumatic physical experience, even though it's joyful, right? So that whole experience for a patient is always at our most stressed. And if AI is something that we can enable that experience to guide, to help, to lift and emotionally help our patients through so that there's not that sense of loneliness or isolation that happens so often, there's so many really cool opportunities.
There is. Now, I will tell you that where I'm a little more cautious on the disruption is the blockchain. I didn't dive right into that. I was also going from cancer to COVID, and writing my book and all that. But I'm still playing the long game on that. I'm not deeply involved in the blockchain. I learn about it. I go to webinars about NFTs and about that. And I know there's some people making a ton of money on it, but there's also people that lost a ton of money on it as well. So, you got to educate yourself as much as you can. There's people that are experts on it and not me. But so AI, I'm just consuming as well and looking for where it's being applied really with good ethics and good and helping people is what I hope to do there. So.
Yeah. And, for me, I love the idea of, an AI companion who through a device this is not unattainable in the short term, right? Through video imaging and hologram type experiences where you're in the hospital and you're being moved from an imaging experience to the next diagnostic test, and you're sitting on a gurney and you're in the hallway waiting for the next thing, and you are really, as a patient, alone.
Yeah.
But what if you had a platform with a hologram that was your AI that would say, "Hey, Howard, you're the next patient in line. We're 3 minutes away. How are you doing? Do you need anything?" Right? And there was somebody who was actually there in a form, taking care of you. I have personally spent time in those hallways with family members where it's like you turn around and you look and there's not another living soul in sight. And I was convinced that we had been forgotten in nuclear medicine as we were going in for whatever, right? And I'm looking and it's like, this is horrifying. And I was with my grandfather, and what if he'd been alone, right? He physically cannot move off of the gurney. And that sense of, oh my God, there's no one around. This happens to people in our healthcare system every day.
It does. And I, going through the healthcare system as a cancer patient and through COVID, it's challenging. Even for someone that knows what they're doing a little bit, it's very challenging. The insurance process, we're talking U.S. system here, it's broken in so many ways. It really is. And again, as the patient or the care partner, we see the cracks in the armor, and we wish they could become concierge hotels, but they're stuck in their ways. You don't want to hear the words profit before patience, but sometimes it happens. But I've made it through. Not everyone is so lucky, and everyone is very challenged with that. I wanted to switch and talk about personal disruption for a second, because one of the things that we talked about in our earlier conversations is that when you take a job at a new company, you don't know everybody. They can be different colors, they can be different cultures, they can be different ethnicities. And one of the parts of my work that I've actually helped broaden in me is interfaith work. And I work here in Michigan, and we have the largest Arab Muslim population, which, there's a lot of things going on in the world. The thing that's bothering me is there's a lot of hate in the world right now. And you're not taught to hate, you choose hate, but you can also choose kindness. You can also choose giving. You can also choose mentorship, right? So the interfaith work's important because until you understand the other, that might be your person who you're working with on a team. Sports teams have multicultural people. Business teams that have to get stuff done, you don't know who you're going to be working next to, and they may not look like you. They might not sound like you. They didn't grow up like you. They have a different history. They have different cultures, different foods they like. And so I find this the most fascinating people, and typically academia would call it organizational behavior. Getting teams and team chemistry and team productivity has been challenged by COVID because we're not seeing each other as much. We're seeing each other on screens. Now, thank God we can do this, by the way, because now I didn't have to fly to Phoenix to see you, but it's really cool. But that interpersonal understanding, you actually have to be a little trusting, and you always don't have to be right. You actually have to have some openness in your ability to learn about the other and welcome them in and have them learn about you. And you don't always have to agree, but if you're at work with them, you got to get along with that colleague to move the ball forward and try to get the project done or the goals done and things like that. And so I actually have a white paper, and it's a book discussion guide called Interfaith Bridge Building, Why Do This Work? And I give about 16 reasons why, and I say fill in the final 2 for yourself. Because look, when you're at the hospital checking in, they may be a different culture, different race, different religion. You want them to take care of you and check you in properly. You want your nurse, who may be, African-American or Hindu and not, like you, to care for you. And so it's about that mutual respect. And I love that interpersonal stuff. And I'm a big student of that organizational behavior and that interpersonal and being welcoming. And now listen, you can be welcoming and, get stabbed in the back too. But is a fine line for that. And sometimes, you get into group work and you're doing 80% and they're doing 20. Hopefully sometimes they're doing 80 and you're doing 20. But that's a dynamic of teamwork. And what I will tell you that fighting cancer is a team sport. It's a team sport. I don't know, even in golf and tennis, which are individual sports, you still have your trainers behind you, your coaches behind you, you have your lawyers behind you, your finance people behind you. Teams. We are a culture that works in teams. Okay. And so you need to be able to work on a team. in business, in life, in family, in relationships. So I kind of wanted to make sure that
no one is an island, and we forget that often. And thank you for bringing us to the interfaith interaction, because our world is multidimensional and not everybody is like us. And in work that I do with organizational change, right, there's this mindset of becoming acceptance of that feeling of uncertainty, get comfortable with it, right? With uncertainty, because we don't know what's going to happen. But that applies to the human interaction dynamic as well. And it's not always, just thinking through this, right? We don't always touch that as well as we probably need to, because success is a team sport. Nobody wins alone. We can lose alone.
For sure.
Right. But nobody truly wins alone. Howard, you have shared some tremendous insights with the audience today. I thank you for your journey and sharing and diving into the roadblocks and the things that you've overcome with cancer, and how you're taking all of those experiences and giving back in your mentorships and in the speaking and writing and things that you're doing for larger groups. If there are people who are interested in learning more about you or getting in contact, where should they go to find you?
Well, everything's at shiningbrightly.com. I'm obviously on the socials of LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram. I'm not a TikToker, maybe yet. I'm maybe a slow adopter there. Maybe I got to get there. But shiningbrightly.com has the book information. Speaking, please contact me about speaking gigs for large and small groups and corporations and healthcare. I can take, I've lots of different topics that we can talk about: workshop facilitating and emceeing and fundraisers for nonprofits. And then also I have a podcast. Shining Brightly podcast is growing. It's all about overcoming an inspiration. So always looking for guests there as well. And then my advocacy is there. My work in entrepreneurship and leadership and in cancer and in the Jewish community and interfaith work is all there as well. So shiningbrightly.com would be great. And then I'm going to put on my glasses because you're shining brightly, Leslie, today. And my final word is that if we choose to shine brightly just a little bit each day for ourselves, always take care of yourselves, then lift up others. And then in our neighborhoods and communities, the world will be a better place. And thank you for having me. And it was just a pleasure.
Howard, the pleasure is all mine. For the audience, you know the rules. Don't get left behind. Join me next time.
That's it for today's episode of Disrupt and Innovate. Head over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Every single week, one lucky listener that posts a review on iTunes will win the grand prize drawing, a $15,000 private VIP day with Lisa Levy. And be sure to head over to disruptandinnovate.com and get your free copy of Lisa's gift, and join us on our next episode.